Heidi ho, everyone, and welcome once again to this Trader Talk radio session, which is of the opening of UK in about 25 minutes from now. And we're going to see if we can make some more money for you today. Ash has absolutely smashed it in the last couple of days on the footsie, and hopefully you guys are on board with that. And I think, Ash, you're probably closed now, have you?
Yes, we've closed up. I'll quickly bring the chart up, but yeah, it's just very recently hit target. So
Beautiful, great trade, mate.
show you what I got. Yeah, I mean it was kind of they're always good when they win, aren't they?
Well, you got in at a pretty good number for the second time in particular, but
Yeah, I mean, I had reason, and I suppose to be fair, there were technical reasons to get in, which is partly what I do, and then obviously the fundamental reason is obviously partly what I do as well, and they both married, and that just goes to show the power of when you get a fundamental and technical area, to trade into. So my
layers, mate. It's all about layers, isn't it?
It's all about layers, yeah, absolutely. So my two trades were there and there, and I was quite. Was it there 60 that high? Yes, it was. I was quite fortunate because we were talking yesterday about maybe taking something off there, and I was I didn't really want to do that, but when it did start to take off above the level, then I was able to kind of monitor the trade, knowing that if it started to break down the structure of this hourly chart, that I'd have to probably start to take a bit of profit. But this morning we just had a slight dip, and it's picked back up again. I had a target just beneath this pivot because we are ultimately, the weekly chart's in an uptrend. So when I was explaining this yesterday in the breakout group, I was saying to them that this weekly chart, as vicious as this movement to the downside is still an uptrend, and it's currently, it's forming this hammer, which is going to be interesting, because I think when we come down to some of the shorter term timeframes, the key is going to be, can it break through this level here? Can it get a decisive close above this point? Now it's only Wednesday, so it could be looking at Thursday, Friday, or even into next week to see if we can get a close above where the weekly pivot currently exists, and then we can have a bit more confidence that a trade to the upside may well have a little bit more legs. I still would be a little bit concerned about that, because the way that I would read this chart would be that the likelihood is, nobody can say exactly what's going to happen, but the likelihood would be that if it did break to the upside, we'd probably be looking at this level before it would then probably start coming back again. And the question would be, would that level be enough to actually change, back to the resumption of this daily trend down here, which is to the downside? So would the resumption of the daily trend be to the downside, and then really with a weekly following, and this left shoulder area, the head, and what could become a right shoulder area is a bit concerning. We are at fairly significant highs up here. We still have this trade war dispute going on. China are due to put on their tariffs in the 1st of June. I think that's going to spook people quite a lot.
It's only a little squabble now, apparently, according to Donald's.
It's turned into a squabble.
Yeah, he's turned it from a war to a squabble now.
Okay, all right. Well,
no big deal.
Yeah, well, that certainly helped the footsie out, and interestingly, he's really he's putting a lot of pressure on the Fed to effectively, try and counterbalance what China are doing with the trade dispute. And seeing if the Fed can actually add some stimulus, but it's going to be tricky. I think that's going to make making a decision around here a little bit difficult on the fundamentals. So we're going to need to trust the technicals that they will hold out. So if it does come back here, realistically, we are looking for upside, but the real upside is going to happen if we break through this trend line up here. But I think it's worth coming out, because if it is to break through here, then we're going to get almost the same price on the way down again if price breaks out at this particular point. And also, we don't know really what this weekly bar is going to do just yet. So it might end up as a hammer, and if it does, then it's going to have a strong indication that we're headed for further upside. If it doesn't, then which may still fail somewhere around about this level, it may still retrace. Maybe it forms an inverted head and shoulders on the 4 hourly. Who knows? But there's quite a lot really here to make this area kind of sticky, which is why I chose it as an area of profit taking in the first place. And as I say, it's kind of proved to be I think is a good area to take things off the table. But yeah, it worked out well, mate. The trade has worked out well. But it does mean that as today goes, trading the FTSE is probably not likely. From this point, the only direction you could trade it in is down, and the reason of that is because so far we haven't cleared resistance, and this resistance is absolutely in line here. And one of the reasons that this does become strong resistance is because of this hourly chart. There's an attempt here, breakdown, an attempt here, breakdown, an attempt here, and a gap and a breakdown. So there are going to be sellers probably still keen in this area. But talks of squabbling rather than wars, stimulus potentially coming in for China, possibly enough pressure from Donald Trump getting the Fed to add some stimulus in America would not suggest that it does break down here significantly. So doesn't look to me like it looks like a decent area to try and take a short, but it doesn't appear that that's going to happen just yet. I think we need to see a little bit more unfolding. So I'm not sure, mate. That Donald Trump his actions don't match his rhetoric. Iran is an example.
It's chopping and changing all over the place at the moment.
Absolutely. He's saying he's denying preparations for war against Iran. Again, may well be true, but there seems to be a certain ramp up in tensions between the US and Iran. There was a ramp up yesterday in tensions between. I don't know if you listened into it, but is it Stephen Mnuchin? I'm not sure the guy's name, but the defense secretary for the United States was in a news conference with his Russian counterpart. I'm not sure the guy's name, but they're talking about Venezuela. And again, there's another country. I didn't even consider Russia when I was saying the other day about the fact that the United States are spreading themselves very thin when it comes down to the people that they're taking on, and listing China and listing Iran, European Union, potentially North Korea. Hadn't really considered China. I hadn't considered Russia, but this Venezuelan issue, it does actually kind of like couple China and Russia into that. And there could well be some American troops going over to Venezuela to get their man in power, to try and get their man in power. So there is a lot of tension that Donald Trump is creating, and he's creating a lot of enemies. I don't see where he's going to get his allies from. I mean, if he's kind of kicking off against the European Union, are they going to be as willing to help America if there is some sort of military dispute? I mean, it wouldn't be wise to take on a superpower like Russia or China, but if there's some kind of military dispute, then where's the support going to come? I think,
mate, we'll be there. Aussies will be there, but we don't count for too much when there's not too many of us. But
no, well, what, we'll probably be there as well. I wouldn't be surprised. Probably maybe we haven't got our eye on the ball with anything else but Brexit right now. So who knows? Maybe we won't. But
it's fairly tragic. But whenever the US say jump, the Aussies generally tend to say how high,
right?
And that's a very sad thing. But in truth, through many, I'll call them squabbles, in particular, I suppose World War II, where the Aussies were under threat. Had it not been for the Americans, we might be speaking a different language right now. So it's kind of understandable that you have to stand by them, but they get into some messes that we're really not interested in, and nor should be.
Yeah, and it's the same. It's the same for the UK, isn't it? It's you know, the history goes back quite a long way. But when did those allies and those relationships get broken? Because, you know, it wasn't a million years ago that the UK and Russia were allied against Nazi Germany. So
yeah, it does change over time. It's true.
yeah. So only maybe, you know, and also the UK did not back America's invasion of Vietnam. So that there are sort of occasions, certainly when the Allies do decide that you know, it's not for them, and maybe this will end up being one of them. But I think the key point is that Donald Trump is by a minimum, he's ruffling a lot of feathers, and it's only really going to take, you know, some of these birds to come together and say, let's all go at the same time, and they could be in all sorts of trouble. But at this stage,
say, we'll beat you all. You're all in terrible trouble.
Yeah, well, yeah, he would.
Just like he said to the Chinese, you know, the other day, he said, you know, you've refused this deal. You're all in trouble.
Yes.
You're going to bear the brunt of this. Yes. And now he's talking, no, it's only a squabble.
Yes. And I was reading something on this, and the interesting thing is that by all accounts, the Chinese are really quite happy to play the long game on this dispute, whereas America really need to get this done. And I think you can almost sense it in the way that Donald Trump is approaching it. You know, it's sort of it's getting a little bit manic in the way that he's saying what he's saying. And yes, he's being aggressive, but I think he's being more aggressive, trying to get what he needs to get done sooner. And even if we're saying that a short-term time frame is a year, that runs us into the presidential election. So it's possible that that's what we're talking about, you know, being the catalyst. But you know, it could well be a catalyst that is about the state of the economy as well. We just don't know. But for right now, the markets seem to be quite happy. You know, the FTSE 100 and the indices pretty much across the board seem to be quite content that things are contained. But containment does not suggest to me a break to the upside. So that would suggest the only sensible direction is downside. But I don't think that's going to have a great deal of power. But you know, if you were looking at these charts, then maybe you'd have to go down to some pretty short time frames to you know, to actually get some trades on, which makes it a little bit tricky unless you're proficient in that particular style.
Mate, I agree with you. Take a rest. You know, you've had a nice little earner in the last couple of days. So why on earth would you need to be thinking about you know, urgently jumping into the market? You wouldn't. Let it settle down and offer up another opportunity at some stage.
Yeah, and you know what? On top of that, you know, we're currently at the 14th of May, 15th of May. We're on the 15th of May, so we're 2 weeks in. The last week tends to be a fairly good week for me. You know, historically, and I can't say that every last week of the month is the best, but historically, I tend to find the charts just that little bit easier to read for whatever reason. I think there are positions that people, you know, there are books that need to be balanced out, or there are trades that need to be closed up or got into by the end of the month, and it does tend to kind of create a little bit more volume, and it tends to be a little bit easier to read. So you know, to wait even a week, I'm quite happy with that. You know, to wait until next week and let that pass, and then actually look at the very last week of the month and see if there are if there's one or two more trades that I can grab. And that will also, I think, fairly significantly get us towards the potential for those Chinese tariff to kick in. So the suggestion that, you know, that I'm thinking in my mind is that the last week of this month will be something that I would be currently looking for some downside, and that would quite nicely match with my current analysis that if we get a hammer of some sort this week, get a push to the upside next week, the final week of the month could be in this area, which will be a great area for me to look for some downside.
Cool. Let's take a look at some news, shall we? And see what data we're looking for today, what we need to avoid or take advantage of. And the one thing that is very, very clear is that the poor old Aussie just cannot take a trick. Everything is going against it in number terms, in everything terms. And the latest blow to the Aussie dollar is the wage price index, which was released this morning. Same as last time, but they were predicting that that would be a rise. It was not, so that's a miss. All the Chinese news, bar one, was a miss. Good news, I suppose, and that's interesting. Out of China, the unemployment rate only rates a very minor announcement. Very interesting. But that's the way they apportion it.
Oh, but look at those though. Those other numbers aren't particularly good, are they?
No, they're not. She's all red.
And this is the interesting thing, isn't it? Because we've had some red numbers, and yet the stock markets across the board. I see that the Dow futures are currently pointing to a positive open. That the S&P is the same, the Nasdaq's the same, the FTSE's the same. European markets are the same, and we've got the same with the Nikkei. And what's interesting about these numbers is that the reason that the market seems to be happy enough with them to keep buying into it is that it would suggest some Chinese stimulus.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
My point, of course, is that I've been waiting to trade Aussie Kiwi long, and this just puts a really bad flavour on that particular trade for me. Unfortunate, I guess, in one way that I'm actually not in it, because I just cannot see the Aussie rallying now. It's under so much pressure. And regardless of what the Kiwi does, and the Kiwi should be going short, and I don't know that it is to a great degree. Maybe I'll need to switch to something else against the Kiwi and trade that. And that brings me to a point. You had a couple of questions yesterday in your presentation.
Breakout group,
right?
Yeah.
And that you want to talk about, and in particular,
I do want to talk about, actually, mate. And I'll tell you what I hadn't remembered. There was a slingshot question which I struggled to answer, and I will tell you what my answer was after I show you this chart, and we'll talk about the trade that was in question.
And those in the room, guys, in case you're wondering, there's no setups, which is why I'm not going to the charts right now, but I will be going there after we've had this discussion.
Okay, so it was the Euro Swiss. Now let me see if I can recognise
Euro Swiss. My God, I've never traded the slingshot on Euro Swiss.
Was it Euro Swiss? I'm pretty sure it was. No. Was it Euro Swiss? This is maybe where we. This is maybe where I struggle. Let me see. I have to see if I can find it to start with.
Actually, while you're looking for that, why don't I just whip around the grounds and
have a look around the grounds, mate, and I'll see if I can find. And I'll see if I can find if it was this one even.
Will do. It'll come to you, I'm sure. Rightio ho. Let's get rid of Forex Factory. We've had just about enough of that right now. And let's start talking currency charts. We'll start with cable. Now, cable is still on my radar. And the reason it's still on my radar is that it's now hit the bottom of this channel. Of course, it's smashed through the trend line, which is significant, of course. But the one thing that I'd be looking for when that happens is a retest of the trend line. So impossible to trade short here for me. I'm not going to try and jump in on this, but at the same time, catching a falling knife is a very, very dangerous thing to do as well. So you've got to have good reason to do that. And at this very point in time, the only slight hint I've got that this could actually, well, I won't even mention the word this could actually retrace, in other words, go long, is this little scenario here where it's anything but conclusive, but there's the hint, I guess, of a bullish engulfing bar there, which of course played out. And now we've come back pretty much to that area. The potential for this to become a higher low is good because we are at the bottom of this channel. But again, you've got to take into consideration that we've smashed through the trend line. So, and smashed. I don't mean we've just gone through it. We've actually hammered it and really given it a good workover. So it's consolidation or retracement for me. And to trade it long, you need the right signs, and I'm not getting those on the 4-hour chart at all. The hourly chart is a little bit better, but not super either. I'm looking for a clear double bottom, or I'm looking for a clear bullish engulfing bar, but they're just not there. And until they happen, it's very, very difficult to even have the slightest bit of confidence that this can go long, and in particular through the daily pivot. Any retracement here, you've got to be thinking that there'll be sellers jumping all over it again, and it's really, really tough to be calling it long here. And I'm not, but I am looking for signs that it can actually reverse. So that is cable, and of course you've got to take into consideration that there's still clouds over Brexit, and there's still Donald doing his little squabbles and all the rest of it. So anything against the dollar's still precarious, in my humble opinion. The pound obviously comes into that, and there are other forces at work as well. If you're trading this short and in the trend, then happy days. You've got to be on good terms with yourself, I would have thought, because there is no sign of this actually turning around at the moment. And as I say, it's smashed through the trend line. You've really got to be thinking that we're going to have a look at these lows here, which is another only 20, 30 odd pips away. I understand that. So maybe it's time to ease off the pedal when you get to there. But really, at the moment, only retracement I can see is on the cards and not reversal. We shall see how that pans out. I'm keen to get long, but it's just not there.
Which one's that, mate?
That's cable, mate.
Cable.
Yeah, look, it's just impossible for me to trade it at the moment. I can't trade short, and to trade long against this momentum, I've got to have a good reason to do it, and it doesn't exist. So move on. Euro pound's exactly the same upside down, I suppose. I'm still keen to get short this, but it's passed through all the opportunities that I've been given. One was this trend line through here, play a false break. The other's this trend line through here to play a false break. That's kind of still there, but it's not looking too likely at the moment. That could change, of course, quickly. But I'd need to see this down here and then retest it. Until that happens, or until something else makes its presence felt, maybe coming back into here, retesting the daily pivot top of range confluence area is good enough for that. And probably I'd say yes, it is. You've got to consider now, of course, that we are overbought, or are we? Historically, I don't think we're overbought. The way I measure overbought is to measure the gap between the daily pivot and the weekly pivot, or price and the weekly pivot as well, when it's stretched like this. But that gap there at 85 pips is not historically, really out there. So this could still go higher without any surprise. Not what I'm looking for. So it's really a common theme that I'm going through at the moment. This is another one I've been waiting to trade, Aussie Kiwi long, but I've just about given this up because of the hammering that the Aussie gets in data releases and news. It's really just copying it from every angle, and it's very, very difficult to be thinking long at all. But from a technical standpoint, we've still got a double bottom as the I didn't mean to go that way. I meant to go that way. We've still got a double bottom as the most recent of chart dominance, if you like, and the bottom of this range, which just keeps being hammered and hammered and hammered. We're really having a good crack at it this time, though, because we just cannot clear this area. And again, fundamentals are telling me that trading this long is just not a good conveyance at the moment. Although, again, I go back to the interest rate difference last week where the Aussie didn't cut, the Kiwi did. And that's why I've been looking to go long, but gee, it's getting harder and harder to convince myself that that's a play. But again, we've still got a double bottom here. We've still got a higher low on that basis. And whilst ever that's the case, technically, I'm still looking for a long. I can't trade the current bar on the 4-hour chart because that would necessitate trading straight into the daily pivot without taking any profit. Not for me, not against this momentum. So I'm sorry, I've got to stay out of Aussie Kiwi, maybe until, I don't know, we do break out and then come back and retest. That's probably the only thing I see at the moment. It ain't easy, guys. Let's take a look at the, hang on, I've got to sneeze.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you got the sneeze button.
I tried to hit the microphone mute, but I just couldn't control myself at the time. It wasn't working.
It's funny, there was enough time to say that you had to sneeze, but by the time you'd said that, there was no time to do anything else.
No, too late. All gone. At least I managed to get off the microphone a little bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have blasted your re-rolls out. So looking at the other side of that interest rate cut, we're kind of starting to see, I guess, in minuscule portions, the result of that. That was the interest rate announcement there where they cut interest rates, but it was quickly obliterated for whatever reason. And I haven't worked that one out yet. But now we're just slowly creeping short. And that's useless to me. I can't trade that. That's garbage for me. You know, it's okay for a trend trader and you're in the trend. That's perfectly fine. But for me, it's garbage. I can't trade that. I have to wait for something to happen. That something is unlikely to happen on the 4-hour chart now because we have broken the trend line. We've had a retest of the trend line on the smaller time frames. This just looks like now it's going to go short, but I'm not jumping in here, that's for sure. The best case scenario for me would have been for this trend line, and still the case, I suppose, if that were to break to the high side for whatever reason. I can't imagine why it would, but if it were to do so and consolidate a little bit, then come back underneath all of this weekly pivot, daily pivot, confluence of trend lines, and then retest there, what a great place to trade from that would be. Conversely, if you're bullish at all, it would be exactly the same if it broke it and retested it. You know, it's a great place to launch a trade from. I just can't see that being long for me, and really, I'm kind of pushing the wishful buttons, I suppose, to get it up to here because I can't see what can drive it up to here. Just don't get it. So that's frustrating. So that's the frustrating part of it at the moment. The euro, not so much frustrating because I can see what I need to do. And it's pretty clear to me that we've had a break of this trend line. We've come back to have a look at the trend line again. You could be forgiven for, as I said yesterday, thinking this is going short because if you look at the daily chart, this has still got lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower low. Well, not a lower low there, sorry, but a lower high here, or at least, yeah, it's lower. I'll call it lower high. So you could be forgiven for thinking this is going short. And if you're trend trading, then I can absolutely see why you'd want to be back in on that. I would agree with that sentiment, absolutely. But I also see that we've got a target up here. We've broken above the monthly pivot. We've had a close above it. Now we've had a close below it. If we were to come back, then I would be all over this to the long side. So what I'm looking for is price to get back above here, then retest it from above. And you can see it's not only the monthly pivot that's there. They're all there. It's the three stooges.
Wow.
And we've got a support trade line at the same place. If you know anything about support and resistance, pardon me, and you can find, and I don't care which direction you find, if you can find a reason to trade from here, you could go a long way. This is a very, very strong level. The other way to look at it, of course, is that it's telling you in spades that the market is consolidating. There's no other way to look at that. You know, the markets all come together in the one spot halfway through the month, and that's telling you that the market right now isn't going anywhere. But if you can find a reason to trade away from here, boy, I think you'll get a good result out of it. I really do. It's a strong level to trade from. So, am I keen to? You bet I am. And as soon as we get back above here and retest, you'll see me into the market long like a flash. That's my analysis on the euro at the moment. But it really is the strongest thing I've got. And if this falls away now, I think I'll cry, because I don't think I'm going to have a trade this week if that's going to be the case. I've tried a couple of little 30-minute just in cases. I tried one last night, didn't work out. So I'm looking for something meaningful. And really, what I've just described to you is exactly where I'm at. And I can't see anything to get me into the market or get me excited until what I've just described to you happen. If I could, I would probably take the rest of the day off and come back and have a look at the 4-hour candles on the euro. And that's pretty much all I would do. So that's kind of where I'm at, mate. Frustrating, but you know, we all go through that. It's you were kind of like that last week with.
Oh God!
I wish I could piss off and take a holiday. I'm kind of like that myself this week.
Yeah,
not interested.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? Is that you know, yeah, this is a wonderful industry to be involved in when things are going well, but when things are tough, which, you know, it does happen, and actually, you know, it's it will continue to happen regularly, because that's the world we live in. You know, it's the market really does reflect the world, and if the world is tough, then the market's tough. So when these things happen, then yeah, you just you don't really want to do anything else but get away and just get out of here, do you? But
it's nothing new, absolutely nothing new. You know?
Yeah,
there comes a time, especially, you know, when you're getting towards halfway through the year, you've been at it for 4 or 5 months. It's a good idea to take a break. And
yes,
more than willing to walk away from the charts for a week. That'd be good.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the other thing, isn't it? You know, I think the two of us probably put in a lot of time equity when it comes down to looking at charts, and you know, that it does mean that a sustained break is absolutely necessary at times. It's not like we're going to forget our strategy and forget our approach all of a sudden. It's just a way to kind of clear the decks a little bit, and you know, that actually makes trading a lot easier in the long run.
Yeah, look, funnily, 2 or 3 nice setups will probably change that. Very
oh yeah, of course, and that's the thing, and you know, you just don't know when they're going to come.
No.
You know, just thinking about setups, the FTSE 100 has just opened, and we have got. Let me just show you my chart. We've got the market's slightly under pressure here. We've come off the high. Bring in the other chart actually, because I don't think this one's got pivots. Oh, it does have pivots. There we go. I'm on a short-term time frame, but yeah, we've come off the high here. Didn't quite get to the pivot, and it's just under pressure. But you can see that there's a trend line here that would probably need to get broken down. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to see some twitchiness in the market. And as I said at the top of the show, really the direction that is the most I guess likely and possibly safest is to look for downside from this particular area, and it really is going to take, if you know, if people are really keen to trade this, it's going to take shorter term timeframes to trade it, because it probably needs to go up a little further if it's going to be a short for a swing, if you like. Not that it wouldn't necessarily collapse from here, but it's just not quite as attractive. But this is what we'd probably have to see. You know, we'd have to see this breakdown in a bar or two, and then move back to the upside and stop. You know, somewhere around about the trend line area. Not exactly sure where that'll be, but stopping somewhere about that after retracement, and then there may well be something to look for to trade. But we need to see this breakdown first, because there's every chance that the market just bubbles along and continues to try and surge forward, but then possibly start to break down. And it's the interesting thing when you look at a bar like this on the weekly, is that this weekly bar is attempting to form, but by all intents and purposes, we're only halfway through the week. So this may well still get refused here. And if it was to be the case, then it's going to start looking like the top end of a structure when it comes down to the daily. So it's possible that we don't even break through here, and actually this does start to look like a more attractive proposition. So it will be a consideration. It will be a consideration, but as I say, we first and foremost, this trend line is in place, and this is the area that I'm looking for with the FTSE now, just to see whether that's going to break down and see whether that's going to provide any further detail in this. I think there's going to be a little bit of twitchiness, as I say, but if this does break down, daily pivot will probably be some sort of potential bounce point. I had actually, yeah, I'd marked an area off slightly higher than the daily pivot as an area that would be possible bounce, and that area was effectively. Yeah, you know, it was somewhere around, you know, where the gap actually ended up opening up. So it's actually quite a bit higher than the daily pivot. And you can see that there is a little bit of structure here as well. Certainly when we look on the hourly chart, there's a little bit of structure down here as well. You know, it actually suggests it's even a little bit higher. So yeah, there's I think if you're looking for downside and it does start to break to the downside, then you're probably only aiming for a little bit before it bounces back up again. And that might make things a little bit hairier.
You've got a question from Ben there, mate. Can you see the on?
I will get to it.
You can, yeah. I'll go and give my nose a good blow so I stop sneezing.
Yeah, you go for it, mate. Bullish engulfing on which time frame, buddy? I guess you mean on the daily. Yes, it does. Yeah, it absolutely does. I think, you know, when it comes down, yes, the bullish engulfing bar does suggest that this is the key aspect of this. What the bullish engulfing bar suggests is that there's further upside. When I think about the elements of this, it suggests to me that it's going to bash its head here for a little while, and if it does break through, which the bullish engulfing bar would endorse, then there might well be a short up here. But yeah, the bullish engulfing bar endorses upside, so it would suggest that anything that did come back down again, which is really, I suppose, to my point, is that if we're going to be looking for short-term entries here, the initial trade would be the initial sensible area to start the morning would be to look for downside, but it would need to break down this area. But you're absolutely right, that bullish engulfing bar doesn't suggest downside, so it suggests that after a short-term move to the downside, it would probably get caught somewhere around here, and then it moves back up again. But the question is, does it move back up to create, you know, a downward trade? Or does it come back up here and just, you know, break back through this area and start to become a little bit choppier? So yes, there's the aspects are multiple, and I suppose that is why I wouldn't just be looking at that bullish engulfing on its own, because I'm still kind of considering that. The fundamental aspect of this market, the fundamental aspect of the structure, is still kind of twitchy. You know, we still have this kind of this outlook which could be negative. So on the face of it, you're absolutely right. You know, you'd have to look at this this daily chart, and you'd have to say, okay, well, there's a bullish engulfing bar. It's just jumped off an area of support down here. So on the face of it, we should really be looking for opportunities to go long today again. and technically speaking, that would be the safest play. And I suppose the point that that you're currently making is to a degree similar to the point I'm making, which is suggesting that downside could fail quite quickly because of this kind of thing. What I would now probably want to see, just because of what's going on with the fundamentals, is will this, after a potential dip, will it actually break out? Because the bullish engulfing bar, which this is what Ben's talking about, this 2-bar pattern here, push to the downside. This bar has engulfed the body of the previous bar. So that bullish engulfing bar is suggesting that there is strength in the market for today. It's suggesting that today that there will very, very likely be some strength in the market. It's implying that the market will close above its open. Now the open's only here. So now that doesn't tell you how much strength, and it doesn't tell you the time that strength will last for. It just implies that there is strength in the market. So what may well happen is that after this bullish engulfing bar, we get another bar which is showing some indecision. And at that point, the bullish engulfing bar becomes less, just a little bit more diluted. And then we might start to see some downside. This is a good example. This is a bearish engulfing. Now I know that some of you would want to see it open above the high, but that's not classic. The classic engulfing bar just engulfs the body. So this is a bearish engulfing bar. And if you guys can see that easily, so I'm just going to change this to a clean chart here. There's a bearish engulfing bar down here. The next day, it would suggest that the next day would close beneath its open, which didn't happen. It gapped down, and it was showing that there was some weakness down here, but it gapped down, ended up closing above, and then it was that bar which indicated that we could well be looking for some upside on this area of support. So this is on an area of resistance. So yes, I've got this aspect, but it might be that we're waiting for a day just to see how this bullish engulfing bar is to react. It does suggest that downside is unlikely today. So that's one thing that it would do. Keep us away from the shorts on a longer term time frame. You might want to just a little scalp or something, but it would suggest that staying away from the shorts on a longer term time frame is less likely. But it doesn't necessarily, given the other factors that are out there, suggest to me that that just because it dips back into the engulfing bar, that we are likely necessarily to continue to the upside. So yeah, my reasons are multifaceted, mate, and that's the benefit, if you like, of trading one market, because I'm not just looking around for a bullish engulfing bar on lots of different markets and then trading it. I'm adding in the other things that I know that will add validity to the bullish engulfing bar. Another example, a bearish engulfing bar here. Trade wars starting to kick into place around this point. The whispers are starting to come into play. The earnings season was actually pretty good, but we were getting to the back end of the earnings season, and then the market dropped. So this one was a genuine signal. The second bar there did close below its open, but it was I suppose a little bit bullish. So there was obviously a little bit more waiting to be done. So the actual trigger for the trade was probably here as we break to the downside. So yeah, sometimes we need to let the story unfold. This one, bullish engulfing bar, took off. So that one was something that we would have said was one that gave us genuine information, if you like. Even that one did actually close on a level of potential resistance, but the next one took off. So it's not enough just to look at the bar, but the recognition of the bar is key, and I think you've done a good job with that. Yeah, I got it, mate. I got it. So it does suggest that today is a waiting day. That's where we're at. I mean, Jeff and I were speaking before the show it kicked off, and I think we both said that today probably it's going to be wiser for us to stay out of the way, because what I will end up doing is, if I sit in front of these charts, I'll probably look for some sort of short-term downside trade, and I've got a lot to do today, and I don't really want to get involved in it. So I really, in my mind, have kind of made the decision that today won't be a day that I would trade. I kind of want to see a little bit more price action. I want to see, just hear a little bit more about these disputes and if they're clearing up. You know, bullish engulfing bar or not, or weekly pivot resistance or not. It's just not enough of a clear picture to my mind. You know, the other issue with this is that it could well be a dead cat bounce. You know, and that's concerning. So does that kind of answer that, mate, to you? Does that make sense? You see, the key for me is that the decision is made on many factors, and I'll be talking about this later because we are going to be doing a we're going to be covering the bullish engulfing bar in the course later on. So I will be covering it, but it's all about adding context. Every single pattern we look for is all about adding context. Cool. All right, buddy.
I've been chatting to you without a microphone on because
well, how you doing? Yeah,
sneeze my little head off. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Did you find those questions or that question? Or
no, mate, I can't remember where it was. If Willie's in the room, it was Willie. Was it Willie? No, it was Leonard, actually. I doubt Leonard's listening in. I'll see Leonard later, and do you know what? I'll ask him where it is. I'm pretty sure Leonard's coming tonight. I'll ask him where it is, and I'll bring it back for tomorrow.
Okay, I'll be talking to Leonard tomorrow as well, I think so.
Oh, cool.
That'll be good.
Oh, brilliant.
Well,
okay.
Tomorrow evening, anyway.
Okay.
Awesome. And
All
the
right,
other one, the other chart, which was what, Euro
the
Kiwi?
Now, the other chart we were discussing last night was the Euro Kiwi. So let's get to this. Now, the Euro Kiwi, somebody was taking a long on this last night, and they'd managed to take a flow trade down here, I think. And, and they were still in. They had a really nice flow trade. I'm not sure. Flow trade is ATR, isn't it? So I'm not sure what the reward to resistance was, but it was a really good trade, over 100 pips. They were in profit, and they were also triggering I think it was an income creator in this area up here, and I just said to them, look, it's a very lofty position to be trading into, and it was because of this weekly area up here. You know, there's some resistance in this point. In fact, that's the best area there. So we got some support. That support becomes resistance, and they're basically trading into this zone here. So it wouldn't have been an area that I'd be initiating anything long.
No, nothing new. Okay to hold, but yeah, not into.
Yeah, okay to hold and start maybe managing a bit more aggressively with stops, but not initiating it along. And I think this is quite important, you know, for everybody to recognise, is that if you're trading, you know, if you're trading on a 4-hour chart, you really should be checking your daily and weekly to see if there's any significant resistance if you're trading long. You know, and this is significant resistance. You know, there was a double point here where this was support and it became resistance. You know, previously it wasn't like you're just trading into a potential resistance area. This is a really strong area, and you need to recognise the strong areas. And I appreciate that's not that easy to do, because you know, by some look of it, you're always trading into some support and resistance. But this is a strong area of support or resistance. So that was what we were looking at yesterday, mate. And they were asking me when they were in the trade, and what I was looking at. It was this area here we were looking at, and I saw this bar and I said, well, that's concerning in itself. You know, you got a huge rejection of the area. It does tip a little bit high, but a huge rejection of the area. But also you got this left shoulder here, you got this head, you got this right shoulder, and you've got this trend line, which is suggesting that the market is starting to weaken up here anyway. So I think we were talking around about here, and I was saying, you know, if the market starts to break down, this trend line over here on the hourly, then I'd want to be out of this. But by the same token, I did also say that there's every chance that the 4 hourly could bounce. So yeah, I didn't particularly like it, mate. And I suppose timing of when to have closed a trade that you don't want to be into is always going to be a little bit of a sweat, because you don't know if it's going to break quickly to the downside or whether you're going to get another chance to get out of break even, which I think they probably would have done. But it still looks a bit weak up here, and we know the news with the Kiwi, but I think it's quite telling that we've got that interest rate deduction, and yet the Kiwi hasn't collapsed. So I think we might see a bit more strength from it.
It is weird. Look, fundamentally, I've got to agree with sticking with the long, but
yeah,
to jump into the market right there is really a difficult prospect.
Yeah,
that would be the way I'd deal with it.
Yeah. Well, the other thing,
I'm not in it, so I really can't. I can't do any more than say what I would do. Yeah.
I mean, my other issue with it is when we were looking is that's a lower high on the hourly, and when you get a lower high from a fairly significant level of resistance, then it would start to concern me that actually does start to become a point where the market starts to turn.
Look, it's absolutely a potential reversal point, no question.
Yeah.
But that's all I can offer.
Yeah.
There's nothing certain there, that's for sure.
Well, I'll ask Leonard about the slingshot, because it was interesting for me looking at charts of slingshots, and after assuming that I pretty much got it, that what you would do, I kind of looked at it and I said, I don't think Jeff would have traded that bar. It was quite a big bar, and I was looking at certain things, but Paul B was there, and actually he offered up a perspective that I hadn't really thought of, and I think this is the thing about the slingshots. It is one that really does need the pro trader that trades that particular style to explain. Because it's quite bespoke, isn't it? It's a strategy in its own category in many respects.
Yeah, very much so. And that's no surprise, because it's very contrarian to a lot of things that have been taught through trend trading strategies.
Yeah,
and that's where it becomes a little bit okay. You've got to actually know what the rules are. Because if you don't know what the rules are, then you're probably trading a combination of slingshot candle patterns and trend trading, and that can be very, very dangerous if you're trying to do that.
Yeah.
And I would certainly recommend that you don't try and do that, because the slingshot has its own rules, and the candles talk in a completely different fashion at times to the slingshotter than they do to a trend trader. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a little bit of weakness in the market today. I think quite interestingly, and this is where certainly the FTSE 100 is a little out of sync, which makes the prospect a little bit more dangerous today, is that we have, and I'm just having a look for it here, gold is a little bit under pressure. If the FTSE is going to be moving to the downside, I would suggest that the gold is probably going to get a little bit of a boost here. It might get a boost into this area. It might get a boost a little bit higher. But
mate, I'll be gone for another minute. I'll be back shortly.
Okay, buddy. Gold is showing a falling wedge. Hasn't quite touched the lower end of that falling wedge, but that looks to me like that would potentially provide some upside. We need to wait for a bit more clarity with that one, but gold is forming a falling wedge, which is a fairly bullish signal, but still looks a little bit early in its inception, so need some more information on that. The dollar yen is, where are you, dollar yen? The dollar yen is looking kind of weak again. So, again, looks to me like the market could be under some pressure in the early part of the day. Dollar yen would have to break down this particular trend line to start to change its polarity and probably break that low. So dollar yen under 109.54 by the top of the hour, I think would probably well, it's going to be a tricky chart because of some of these lows here. But these areas may well produce a little bit of a bounce to look for the lows again. But dollar yen's under pressure. Dollar yen's under pressure. Gold's a little bit early to make a decision on. That would bring me back to the FTSE. Jeff was talking about the pound dollar earlier today as well, and the pound is, sticky position politically, and interesting that we exist at these lows. I'd certainly want to know what's going to drive this pound higher before I traded it. Every chance with a pound that we just get a holding bar today, and it doesn't really go anywhere, because there is a level along here of pretty significant support, and it's just about on top of that. So would, on the face of it, be a decent area to go long, but I'm pretty sure Jeff was talking about this unfolding before he wanted to jump into it, and I would feel the same. But we should have our radar on cable on the pound dollar, just because of where it is. So yeah, we need some clarity on that. What's gonna provide some upside. So that looks like a day or so before we can look at that. So we're looking at pound dollar would be potentially a long, but with a bit more clarity. That the dollar yen may well be a short today, but that needs to break by the top of the hour. The gold chart again looks like a long when you consider that we've got that falling wedge, which is a bullish sign and signal. But unless you get in at the lows of the falling wedge, which have kind of maybe already gone as it's kind of started to move away from the area. We're looking at an hourly chart here. So falling wedge on the hourly chart would suggest that the only two possibilities would be try and get in right at the bottom end of this falling wedge to give a little bit more safety, or wait for the break and retest, which is the safest. That would be the best way to play this, because it just looks like it may well be in a little bit of a chop today. And the same may happen with dollar yen, where dollar yen is currently at that trend line. It might just chop around, which is going to make it very, very difficult to trade. The pound is a different beast in as much that something else will drive it. So if we're thinking of gold and the dollar yen being driven by sentiment, and the FTSE 100 being driven by sentiment, they all have a link, and they all have this look of holding. As I say that, the FTSE is just starting to break to the downside. So this is starting to suggest, isn't it, that this may well be something that people are much keener to go short on. Let's just have a look at this L5. I'm not going to trade this, but there is potentially an opportunity to get a short-term scalp on this. But this is one of those charts that can create quite high emotion. So you have to be very, very careful. We don't have the information. Ben made a very good point about this engulfing bar, this bullish engulfing bar, which suggests that there probably are still some buyers in this market. Of course, this may just sweep straight back to the downside, and it may be a missed opportunity. But it'd be much nicer and calmer to see just a small little bar up here, and give us an opportunity tomorrow or possibly Friday.
Tough to trade an overextended bar like that for me without some sort of retracement, or at least the very minimum consolidation.
Yeah, but would you be looking short or long?
Oh, it depends on what the next candle brings.
Right, brilliant. Well, I mean, I think that's the key, isn't it? And I think that's the point I'm making, is that we need to have a bit more clarity.
Yes, that's right.
And unfortunately, while you wait for clarity, that your trade can go, but it's better to wait for the clarity, because on the whole, there'll be enough trades out there, but at least you've got a greater chance to be profitable when you do trade. If you just trade because you got an inkling that something's going to happen, then you can get in all sorts of trouble. But there is some resistance up here. But this would be great if this just gave us a little bar, some sort of hammer or something up here, or maybe even a doji. That's going to just add a little bit of weight to the potential for this to break down on Thursday and Friday, and we can look for some downside. But that's all I've got, mate. Really, I don't really have anything else. It's just a day that I prefer right now not to get drawn into anything. As much as I may well be able to make some money in this market, I prefer to not get into anything, shut the charts down, and get on with the day until tomorrow.
Mate, I think we might just do that. First, however, I will go around the grounds and see if there are any 30-minute possibilities, and
Right.
I'll share what I'm thinking. And then, guys, I think we're going to have an early one because I'm very much in the same boat as Ash. I know what I have to do, and that's not going to happen in the next 25 or 30 minutes, that's for sure. So let's take a quick look, unless I am missing something. And the one thing I see here, of course, is a hammer, but that's all I see. I see nothing else to suggest that this can go long right now. So, yes, it's at the low of the day. Is that a significant low? Maybe because it's at the bottom of a channel it is, but no, it's something I just can't jump into. And same as, we've just discussed on that bullish engulfing bar, this could go to here right now. And that would be just bad luck for me, because I'm all about probability, not about possibility. That is possible, but it isn't probable. So for that reason, the best way for me to handle this is to wait for this to break out, hit some resistance, probably there, daily pivot, then pull back, give us a higher low and something to trade off. Then the next phase is where the safer money is. It's more likely to get money out of that trade than it is to get money out of this trade. And that's the whole key to the way I trade. And, it's pretty much the result of my 13 years in front of charts, knowing that, gee whiz, now's the time to jump into this, is the time where I need to think. And when I think, I know that this is not the time to jump into this. The second opportunity is the time to jump into this. Euro pounds, still waiting for that to come back into the range, and same applies. I just can't jump in here. Yes, I can see a potential reversal bar here, but that's all I see. I don't see anything else to back me up. And this is, it's been on a tear. Why is now the time that this is going to stop? Why is it going to turn around now? I need to have more reason than what I've got here to trade this short. I need a reversal pattern of some kind, and really I don't have that. So until I do, then I have to wait. If we get a break here and a retest of the daily pivot in this area and the trade line, then I've probably got something to think about. But at the moment, this is just a possibility rather than a probability. Aussie Kiwi, look, I just know what's going to happen here. I'm going to give this up. I'm going to give it away and say, look, the Aussie's under too much pressure and can't possibly go long from here. Yet this will go up to here. I can see it happening and me missing out. And look, that's okay. I don't mind it, because if I can't see the way in, I can't see the way in. There's a potential here to trade that candle, that one right there, the last bar. Not the current, but the last one. But, my strategy prevents me from doing that. I can't trade into the daily pivot here, which is untested, because the first level of resistance here that's hit, either the daily pivot or the monthly pivot, you can absolutely guarantee there's going to be sellers jumping all over that, because after all, we're coming off this bar here. We put in a lower low, put in a lower high, lower low. We haven't even got another lower high, really. Except this one. So, there's going to be sellers jumping all over it. I just can't trade here for the same reasons as before. This is the one I can trade, but it has to play ball. This is euro dollar. It's got to get above the pivots and retest them. As soon as it does that, again, I'll be on that like a shark on a mackerel. So that's what I'm waiting for. This is really the only trade that's even partially setting up for me now, but I've got to wait for that to happen. I just can't trade it up to there. And again, there's a strong case for the bears. They've had a retest now of this area. if you're at all inclined to go short, this is probably not such a bad area to trade that. In fact, as I said before, if you've got a reason to trade here, this is a very, very good area from which to trade, because it's such a strong level. You've got pivots there with a handkerchief over them, and you've got a support trade line. So, you know, here's a great place to trade from. My bias is long, and I don't have a reversal bar, or I don't have a setup short for my strategy. So I can't trade this short until that manifests in a different scenario. Then I have to be waiting for the long setup. Kiwi, look, again, been looking to trade this short since, well, all week now. When I say all week, it's now into Wednesday. And again, I can't find a way in. If I do, then that is definitely my bias to trade it short, but I just can't find a way in. Aussie, it's impossible to trade that long now. It's under so much pressure that I can't possibly think about trading it long, and I certainly can't jump into it short. So same applies. Looking at a double top here, perhaps. If that's the case and we then get a lower high, time has to take place before I can trade that. There's no sign of reversal here for mine. This is potentially the retracement that we needed to get short, but that doesn't look to be happening either. This is maybe going into consolidation pound yen, so there's no trade there either. Eurocad's a mess, don't want to know about it. Aussie yen's too far gone. The only way I can trade this is long, and there's no possible way to do that right now. A double bottom perhaps is forming. There was a bullish engulfing bar. There was a higher low over here. That would have been perilous had you got into it. This is not easy because the Aussie's under so much pressure. So, you know, you've got to take that into consideration as well. Even when the setups do come, you've got to think, well, can I really trade the Aussie long right now? And the answer you're going to get to that one is probably not, I would think. So, guys, I'm not going to go any further. That's pretty much where I'm at. It's all about, for me, waiting for the euro, or conversely, euro pound, and pound to some degree. But really, it's the euro that I'm focused on. And if we do get above here and retest, then I'll trade. Otherwise, I probably won't. So, mate, that's me. You're done. I'm done. Shall we call it a night if there are no more questions, or a day?
Yeah. There was almost a song in there. Yeah, that sounds good, mate.
Well, we work on that.
I see another night in a bar in Bali coming.
Oh my God! Not another one.
All right, dude. All right. Well, yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good break, mate. I know we'll be back same trade time, same trade channel tomorrow. But maybe the air will clear with a day just not in front of the charts to a degree, anyway.
I can't walk away. I've got to wait for this euro to pan out. And,
okay. Well, let's see if that does pan out, and then we'll be headed for the weekend, which you know, sometimes can't come soon enough. And I know for me, it's going to be IFP, so it's going to be a
busy one for you.
It's busy, but you know, I have to say, very enjoyable. I do like the IFP events.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's be off, and we will be
back at the same trade time and same trade channel tomorrow.
Right, guys. Have a great day, and hope there's some trade set up for you. Unlike myself. See you later. Have a good one. Bye bye for now.